You are listening to Passport Talks.
Today, we're looking at something that seems to be on a lot of minds, especially for our U.S. listeners, getting a European residence permit. We've gone through a really detailed piece covering, I think it was 11 European countries, and the ways Americans might be able to move there.
Yeah, it definitely feels like more than just idle curiosity for many people now.
Right. So our goal here is basically to pull out the key info, give you a good sense of what's actually involved.
Exactly. And the material we looked at really lays out some strong reasons why Europe is becoming so appealing.
Like what? What are the big draws mentioned?
Things like having a solid backup plan, if you ever wanted or needed to leave the U.S., plus the potential for a much lower cost of living.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a big one.
And then there's safety, stability, access to healthcare systems that are, well, often different and maybe more affordable, and even pathways to dual citizenship down the line.
So quite a few angles. Let's maybe unpack those a bit. The backup plan idea, that sounds pretty fundamental, just having options.
It is. It's about flexibility, peace of mind, maybe.
And the cost of living. The article compared New York to places like Budapest and Lisbon, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
And the numbers were pretty dramatic. Something like needing over $12,000 a month in New York versus maybe $3,500 in Budapest.
Wow.
Or $4,900 in Lisbon. And that included rent. I mean, that's a huge difference in affordability.
That really changes the financial picture, doesn't it? Frees up a lot.
Absolutely. For savings, investment, travel, just less pressure. Then the article gets into safety and stability.
How so?
It mentions the 2024 Global Peace Index. The U.S. ranking is, well, it's lower than quite a few European nations listed, like Switzerland, Austria, Portugal.
And they link that partly to gun laws, I imagine.
Yeah, that was mentioned. Generally, stricter controls in Europe contribute to that feeling or reality of greater safety for some people.
Makes sense. And healthcare, always a massive topic for Americans. What did the article highlight there?
It contrasted the universal systems common in Europe with the U.S. setup, focusing on both, quality and cost.
Was there a specific example?
Yeah, the Netherlands. It suggested comprehensive health insurance there, covering quite a lot. Dental, even mental health care might be around $250 a month.
Compared to what in the U.S.?
The article cited an average of maybe $750 a month. So, again, a potentially huge saving for individuals or families.
That's definitely food for thought. Okay, what about citizenship? Dual citizenship possibilities.
Right. The U.S. generally allows it, so you usually wouldn't have to give up your American passport.
Yeah.
And getting EU citizenship, well, that opens up living, working, studying anywhere in the EU. Big advantage.
But not all EU countries allow you to hold two passports.
Correct. The article points out Austria and usually Netherlands have restrictions. So that's a really crucial detail depending on where you're looking. You absolutely have to check that specific country's rules.
And some residency programs might fast track you towards citizenship.
Yes, exactly. Portugal's Golden Visa was mentioned as an example where you might get citizenship in around 5 years. And importantly, without necessarily having to live there full time the whole period.
Interesting. Some more flexibility there, too. What else? Travel.
Yeah, huge point.
Yeah.
Europe's geography being so compact, combined with all the budget, airlines, trains, buses, it makes hopping between countries incredibly easy and affordable.
Give me an example.
Vienna to Barcelona on a flight for maybe $22, taking just 2.5 hours, or like Amsterdam to Brussels by bus for under $10, taking 3 or 4 hours.
So that kind of access is just a different lifestyle.
Totally. Weekend trips to other countries become a real affordable possibility. The article also brought up tax optimization.
Ah, okay. Relevant for business owners or investors.
Definitely. It highlighted places like Hungary with a 15% personal income tax and just 9% corporate tax.
Yeah.
And Cyprus at 12.5% corporate tax. So potential advantages there depending on your situation.
And education, especially for families considering a move.
Big factor. Generally much lower tuition fees than the U.S. Germany and Norway were mentioned as offering free higher education, even to international residents in many cases.
Wow.
Yeah. And even somewhere like Hungary, public university might be up to around $8,000 a year, which is still way less than average U.S. costs, especially out of state.
And the UK obviously has famous universities.
Right. Oxford, Cambridge. Fees are higher there, more comparable perhaps, but the prestige is a huge draw for many.
So lower costs, sometimes free, plus access to great institutions.
Exactly. And a different international perspective for students. Finally, for businesses, The article stressed the EU single market.
Right, that huge consumer base.
450 million people, yeah. And a stable regulatory environment. The Netherlands and the UK were flagged as particularly good hubs for setting up shop.
Okay, so those are the compelling whys. Now, how about the how? The types of permits.
Good transition. The article broke it down into two main types: temporary and permanent residence. A temporary residence permit is usually granted for 1 to 5 years, often renewable, but it might come with limits, like on the type of work you can do or access to some social benefits.
And you get these for specific reasons.
Yeah, the common ones mentioned were things like having a job, starting a business, studying, joining family, getting medical treatment, even volunteering.
Any other routes for temporary?
Oh, yes. Importantly, investment. Greece, Portugal, Hungary are examples, and also options for people who are financially independent. Portugal, Austria, Switzerland, Ireland. And of course, digital nomad visas are popping up, Hungary and Portugal again.
Okay. And permanent residence.
That's for settling more long-term, indefinitely. Usually you get that after holding a temporary permit for a certain number of years, showing you've integrated, etc.
But sometimes you can get it directly.
Yes, that's a key point. Cyprus and Malta were highlighted as places where you can potentially get permanent residence straight away through investment.
Without needing the temporary step first.
Exactly. The article mentioned a minimum investment in Cyprus, around 300,000 euros. Malta has its own structured program, the MPRP. But the core idea is it's a direct path for investors, and permanent residence is often the bridge to citizenship eventually.
Right. So after explaining the types, the article listed those 11 countries considered good options for Americans.
It did, based on criteria like ease of getting the permit, quality of life, how fast you might get permanent residency, and importantly, if English is widely spoken.
And the list was, let's see if I remember, Cyprus, Malta, UK, Ireland.
Netherlands, Sweden, Switzerland, Austria.
Portugal, Hungary, Greece. Got it. A real mix across Europe.
Definitely.
Okay, let's maybe zoom in on some specifics. The article mentions Cyprus and Malta as having the fastest paths to permanent residence.
Yeah, through those direct investment roads we just touched on. For Cyprus, it's that minimum 300,000 euro investment real estate, company shares, investment funds.
And it's relatively quick.
The article suggested maybe around 9 months to get the permit. But there's a catch: you have to visit Cyprus at least once every 2 years to keep it active.
Okay, a maintenance requirement. Anything else about Cyprus?
Mediterranean location, nice climate, lots of history, and that 12.5% corporate tax rate is appealing for businesses. Citizenship could be possible after 8 years.
And Malta. Yeah. Also direct permanent residency via investment.
Yes, through their Malta Permanent Residence Program, or MPRP. The requirements are a bit more detailed there.
Like what?
You need to either rent or buy property meeting certain value thresholds. Plus, pay an administrative fee, a government contribution fee. The amount depends if you rent or buy and make a donation to a Maltese charity or NGO.
So several financial components.
Right. And you also have to prove you have significant financial assets, including a certain amount in liquid funds.
What's Malta like?
A small island nation, also Mediterranean, warm climate, and crucially, English is an official language, which is a big plus for many Americans.
Good point. Let's stick with language. Which other countries on the list use English as a primary language?
Ireland and the UK.
Oh, okay. Tell me about Ireland.
Besides English being official, it scores high on SAISI, that Global Peace Index again. It's often described as having a slower pace of life, quite welcoming.
How do you get residency there typically? Is there an investment option?
Not really an investment visa like Malta or Cyprus. The article focused on the independent means visa, sometimes called Stamp Shiro or retirement permission.
And the requirements for that?
You need to show an annual income of at least 50,000 euro and also have a lump sum saved up enough to cover any major unforeseen costs, basically.
Okay, so geared towards those with stable income or retirement funds. And the UK?
Well, the article noted the UK doesn't have those specific golden visa type investor routes anymore. Residency for U.S. citizens usually comes through more standard channels.
Like work or study.
Exactly. Getting a job offer, often skilled work, or enrolling in a university. And the UK's draw is its diverse job market. Lots of U.S. companies have branches there, top universities, and London as a massive global hub, plus a large established expat community.
Makes sense. Okay, shifting gears to quality of life. Which countries did the article highlight?
Austria, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Switzerland were the top mentions in that category.
Austria?
Central Europe scores very high on safety and sustainability. It's often in the top 10 globally for quality of life. Residency for financially independent people is possible.
How does that work?
You need to prove you have a steady income from outside Austria and that you have accommodation sorted there. There are specific application windows too.
The Netherlands.
Also very high quality of life ranking. Known for being healthy, eco-friendly, think bikes everywhere, great healthcare, inclusive culture, stable economy, low inflation.
Any specific residency routes mentioned?
No dedicated investment visa. It's mostly work, study, or family reunification. Interesting point. Spouses of Dutch nationals have an advantage regarding dual nationality rules sometimes.
Good to know. Sweden.
Northern Europe. Strong economy, high quality of life. Very high happiness rankings apparently scores well on freedom, healthcare, cleanliness, and English proficiency is really high generally.
And residency pathways?
Similar to the Netherlands?
Yeah.
Work, study, family ties, research. Also the EU Blue Card for highly skilled workers.
Lastly in this group, Switzerland.
Known for safety, quality of life, and being wealthy, high GDP per capita. Stunning scenery, of course.
Can financially independent people move there?
Yes. The article mentioned a route where you agree to pay a significant lump sum tax payment each year. The amount varies quite a bit depending on which region you choose.
Okay, interesting variations there. Now, what about countries flagged for having particularly easy paths, especially through investment? Portugal, Hungary, Greece.
Right. Portugal's golden visa was mentioned again with various investment options. Starts around €250,000 for arts or cultural heritage donations.
And higher amounts for other things.
Yeah, 500,000 or more for research, venture capital funds, or creating jobs in a Portuguese company.
Are there non-investment routes in Portugal too?
Yes, definitely. They have permits for digital nomads meeting an income threshold, for financially independent folks with passive income, and for entrepreneurs, setting up a business needing a Portuguese bank account is part of that.
How fast is the process?
Article suggested around 6 months, typically. Portugal itself is described as, great climate, relaxed lifestyle, safe. And that 5-year path to citizenship is a big draw, plus special rules for babies born there after parents have resided for a year.
Okay. Hungary, you mentioned a golden visa there too.
Yes. It offers a 10-year temporary permit, which is renewable. The main ways are investing in units of Hungarian real estate funds or making a donation to a higher education institution.
Any options for remote workers?
Yep. The Hungary White Card needs proof of income. You need to live there mostly, have a contract with a non-Hungarian company, and there's some limitations on local work.
What else about Hungary?
Central location, low taxes, that 15% income, 9% corporate tax, low property transfer tax. Also, affordable healthcare, becoming a bit of a medical tourism spot.
And Greece. What's the investment route there?
Starts at €250,000, typically for buying real estate. Higher amounts needed for things like long-term leases or timeshares or other types of investments.
How long does that permit last?
It's a 5-year renewable status. And citizenship could be on the table after 7 years of living there legally. Greece is described as, Southern Europe, Mediterranean climate, plus a special tax deal for business people moving there, and obviously incredible history.
So lots of investment options. Did the article give general steps for applying via investment?
It did, sort of a broad overview. First step is usually finding a licensed agent. Immigrant Invest was mentioned as one example agency.
Okay, get professional help. Then what?
Gather your documents. Personal stuff, ID, police clearance certificates are common, proof you have the money, proof you've made the investment.
Fulfill the actual investment requirement for the country.
Exactly. Then you have to go through due diligence. Basically, the government checks you out thoroughly.
Background checks, source of funds, etc.
Right. And if all goes well, you collect your residence permit. Sometimes in person, sometimes by courier. Some places might need extra steps like getting a tax number or giving fingerprints.
And what about the process for non-investment routes, like work or study?
More general steps outlined there.
Yeah.
First, figure out if you're eligible based on the country's rules for that specific permit type.
Makes sense.
Then gather the relevant documents, job contract, university acceptance letter, proof of family ties, whatever applies.
Submit the application.
Yep, to the right immigration office or embassy. Then you wait for the decision.
Which can take a while, presumably?
Can vary a lot, yeah. If approved, you get your permit, maybe a visa first, then travel and finalize the permit collection in the country.
Okay. The article also had a comparison table, right? Just hitting the highlights.
Yeah, it was useful for seeing the differences side by side. Things like rough monthly costs, whether English is common, if they have investment residency, how long it takes to potentially get citizenship, and the rules on dual citizenship, a quick snapshot.
Very handy. And finally, it touched on getting actual citizenship after residency.
Right, the naturalization process. Usually goes temporary permit, permanent residency, apply for citizenship.
What are the typical conditions for citizenship?
Generally, you need to have lived there legally for a certain number of years, varies by country. Prove you can support yourself financially, pass tests on language and maybe civics or history, have a clean record, and show you intend to stay.
But there are exceptions.
Yes, especially for investors. Portugal's golden visa path to citizenship in 5 years is an example where the standard residency duration might be shorter or have different conditions.
And the dual citizenship reminder again.
Crucial point. Austria and the Netherlands generally don't allow it, meaning you'd likely have to give up your U.S. citizenship. That's a huge decision. Malta was also mentioned again for having even faster citizenship track through very significant investment.
So wrapping it all up, what's the main takeaway from this exploration?
I think it's that there really are quite a few different ways for U.S. citizens to get residency in Europe. It's not a one-size-fits-all thing.
Lots of paths, each with different benefits and requirements.
Exactly. Whether you're looking for lower living costs, better safety, healthcare access, easier travel, tax benefits, business opportunities, there are options out there.
It really showcases the diversity within Europe.
Yeah.
So the final thought for you listening might be, which of these countries, which of these pathways really resonates with your own goals, your personal situation?
Yeah. If something sparked your interest, it's definitely worth digging deeper into the specific details for that country and that particular permit.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on the Passport Talks.
Thank you.
You are listening to Passport Talks, a podcast on how to become a true cosmopolitan, how to travel the world without visas, create a safe haven for your family, and access top-notch education and healthcare with a second passport or residency.